Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the MCA Lounge. We are here to celebrate a special occasion. I request Shri Sharad Pawar, Mr. Dilip Vengsarkar, Dr. Vijay Patil, Rudra Sharma, and Professor Shetty to take their seats on the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that teamwork is key in any walk of life, cricket included. But when we think of a team in cricket, we tend to think of a squad of only 15, or in today's pandemic times, about 20. But in today's day and age, it is important that we also recognize another team which comprises those who stay away from the spotlight, yet without whom a cricket match will not take place. The umpires, scorers, and ground staff, for instance. Then there are those who work tirelessly behind the scenes and try to accomplish off the field what the players strive to do on it. The coaches, physios, trainers, video analysts, and others who aim to get the players fitter and more consistent. The media, which captures and documents the happenings on the field for posterity. And then there are the managers and administrators, they who run the sport locally, nationally, and internationally, keeping the interests of the players and, of course, the sport in mind. What would cricket be without them? This get-together is dedicated to these unsung heroes and heroines. We have gathered here to celebrate the launch of a book written by someone who knows a thing or two about cricket administration, about managing people, and about leading by example. Someone who has been respected and revered for years in the world of cricket. Someone who was a witness to some of the most extraordinary developments in Indian cricket on and off the field during his innings in the BCCI. Professor Ratnakar Shetty. A teacher of chemistry who became a cricket administrator takes us on a roller coaster ride through the meeting rooms and corridors of the Board of Control for Cricket in India On Board, My Years in BCCI, Test Trial Triumph. In the book, he tells the story of how Indian cricket was run, shaped, and guided in the final years of the 20th century and the first 2 decades of the 21st century, which was by all accounts the most turbulent and yet the most exciting phase in the history of Indian cricket. In the book, he brings us face to face with the extraordinary individuals who shaped, guided, and ran Indian cricket during this period. I would like to request Mr. Rudra Sharma, Senior Commissioning Editor, Rupa Publications, to provide the publisher's perspective on the book.
Good evening, everyone. It's an absolute honor to be part of this book launch. It's an absolute honor to publish this wonderful memoir by Professor Ratnakar Shetty, On Board, which gives insight into the working of an institution called BCCI. We have all known Professor Ratnakar Shetty, our Prof, as he is fondly called, for so many years, his love for the game, the way he has dedicated and conducted himself. And this book is a beautiful and gentle reminder of the acknowledgement of what he has done, and of course his administrative actions off the field. It is also a story of Mumbai cricket. It is also a story of evolution of Indian cricket. It is a story of so many foot soldiers of Indian cricket who working tirelessly behind the scene, cater to viewers and audiences like us, spectators who have a high demand from the game. Because of course cricket is not merely a sport, it's an event and has to be organized in a way. And this book is but a celebration of one such life, Professor Ratnakar Shetty, and many such lives as Professor himself has mentioned in this book. Of course, I'm in no position to comment on his administrative skills, and especially in a room full of former cricketers and administrators. So what I'll do is I'll just want to read a couple of paragraphs from his book. Let his book do the talking, and which goes on to show how cricket is run. It's such minor things which are actually very major, but are managed. So this is an incident during India-Pakistan semi-final at Mohali, and he gets a call from the Prime Minister's office that Dr. Manmohan Singh will be attending the event, and his Pakistani counterpart will also be there. So I'm going to read it from here. The security arrangements at Mohali were unprecedented. I had never seen or experienced anything similar in my years as an administrator. Unfortunately, the conversion of the venue into an impenetrable fortress resulted in the food vans meant for the players being stopped outside the stadium by the police on the day of the game. Normally, the food is laid out on the table by the time a team arrives at the stadium, but the tables in the dressing rooms were laid bare on the morning of 30th March 2011. We did whatever we could, even going to the food stalls in the main pavilion to procure burgers, sandwiches, and wafers for the players, who were understandably restless. The vans did reach the ground eventually, but very late. The players had no time to help themselves to the food before they took to the field. It wasn't exactly the best way to start a World Cup semi-final. More surprises were in store for the players and also for yours truly. Now what happened here, in ICC tournaments, there's only a 10-minute interval between the playing of the national anthems of both the team's nation and the commencement of the game. Hence, those 10 minutes mean a lot to the players. They utilize them to focus and mentally prepare themselves for the battle to follow. So when they were told to stay on the field to exchange introductions with the prime ministers, all the players, both Indian and Pakistani, were understandably very upset. If being deprived of food prior to the game wasn't bad enough, losing those precious minutes just before the start of the play was worse. Unfortunately, there was nothing that could be done. Only 5 minutes were left when the handshaking affair ended, and we had to literally beg the members of the entourage to hurry off the field. It was embarrassing. Now, this was an event. And after that, just one more paragraph. After that, another event happened. And then he received a message from the Chief Secretary of the Government of Maharashtra regarding a meeting at Mantralaya or the Secretariat on the morning of 31st March. Srimati Pratibha Patil and Mr. Raj Paksa, the presidents of India and Sri Lanka respectively, were to attend the final in Mumbai on 2nd April, and the requisite arrangements had to be made. I reached the Mantralaya, which was not very far from the BCCI headquarters and the Wankhede Stadium, where a senior member of Srimati Patil's staff was waiting for me. We proceeded to discuss the modalities. Wiser after the Mohali experience, I turned down a suggestion that members of both teams be introduced to the presidents after the national anthems were played. I explained that not only did the ICC not encourage that practice, but even the players themselves were not very comfortable with it. When asked why that had been permitted at Mohali then, I replied that it was an aberration. The official then proposed that the President of India present the World Cup trophy to the winning team, only to be vetoed by me again. I told him that doing so was the prerogative of the ICC President. The official was displeased, but I told him that I was merely following rules and regulations laid down by the ICC. Now, this is someone who actually refused the President of India and Sri Lanka to shake hands with the players because he followed rules and because he cared for the players. Professor Shetty, thank you very much for writing down this memoir, and thank you very much for your selfless service to Indian cricket. And of course, as publisher, I would want you all to buy this book and make it a bestseller. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rudra. I would like to request Professor Shetty to present a bouquet to the chief guest, Shri Sharad Pawar. Mr. Dilip Vengsarkar.
Oh,
and Shri Vijay Patil. Thank you, Rudra. I, Devendra Prabhudesai, had the honor of assisting Prof on the book. It was an immensely enriching experience, I have to say. It gave me the opportunity to relive those 7 wonderful years during which I was able to serve the BCCI as Manager, Media Relations and Corporate Affairs. When I joined, Mr. Pawar was President, Mr. Niranjan Shah was Secretary, and Prof was the Chief Administrative Officer, CAO, and my reporting manager. At work back then, Prof would often narrate stories related to the people he worked with in the board, what had happened in some of the meetings that he had attended, and some of the decisions that were taken during those meetings. Whenever he narrated those stories, I always felt that someday he should preserve them for posterity in the form of a book. I have been lucky to have had a long association with Rupa, an association that goes back 16 years, and so I am in constant touch with Rudra. And it was during a conversation in October, November 2020 that Rudra mentioned that Rupa had approached Prof to write a book on his innings in the board. I was so excited that I cut my conversation with Rudra short, and I called Prof and I told him that I could not wait to read the book. This was even before he had signed the contract. For obvious reasons, Prof and I did not, or rather could not, meet in person to work on the book. The book was structured entirely on the phone and on email. We would have a marathon conversation on a Sunday morning, and then we would work on the chapter in the week that followed, and then go through what we had put together on the following Sunday. Once Prof was happy with how the chapter had shaped, we would proceed to the next chapter. That is how we did it. I quite enjoyed going down memory lane. Our discussions on the phone and emails rekindled my memories of some remarkable path-breaking ventures that were initiated by the board during Mr. Pawar's term as president. I worked with Prof on Within the Boundary and Beyond, the board's quarterly newsletter. The idea was to create a platform that would showcase what the board was doing on and off the field for the betterment of Indian cricket. It was necessary to communicate that to the outside world, and the newsletter served precisely that purpose. We brought this newsletter out from 2008 to 2014, with copies being shipped across the cricketing world. In the newsletter, we focused on everything significant that was happening, from the performances of India's junior teams and the workshops and training programs that were being run for video analysts, curators, initiatives like the Umpires Exchange Program, for which the board had tied up with Australia, England, and South Africa, and so on. And we received a lot of positive feedback for this newsletter. Prof and I also compiled the annual reports of the board, as well as the annual BCCI calendars, which I am now told have become collector's items. Feels good. From 2008 to 2015, we featured the top Indian cricketers and teams of every decade from the 1940s to the 2010s in this calendar. We also compiled volumes to commemorate the Platinum Jubilee of Test cricket in India in 2008 and the Platinum Jubilee of the Ranji Trophy in 2009. And then, of course, the big day in the BCCI Awards. That was the day when the entire BCCI staff, based on the second floor of the cricket center, would come together and manage everything from backstage management to logistics. That was our function. Those were great days. All these ventures and more find a place in the book, of course. As has been mentioned in the book, the fact is that if in the year 2022, people are saying that India's cricketing reserves are rich and dynamic enough for the BCCI to field 2 teams simultaneously in international cricket, then those who ran the BCCI in the period from 2005-06 to 2012 have to take a lot of credit for the same. It was during this phase that the state associations were given every possible encouragement to create infrastructure, academies. It was also during this phase that the board decided to back the India A concept, which, as we all know, constitutes the bench strength of Indian cricket, give them as much exposure as possible. And then there was something called the IPL. The outcome of all those initiatives is there for everybody to see and experience. My favorite incident from the book occurred in April 2010. We were in an ICC meeting on the first floor in the conference hall when Prof received a message that officers of the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence have arrived at the 4th floor of the cricket center, the IPL office, to conduct a raid. There were a few of us who stayed back that evening. Dr. Devendra Bhuvad is there. We call him doctor because he had the solution to all computer issues. Deven, where are you? Deven Bhuvad was there. I think Nilesh was also there. We stayed back that evening. And I happened to be in the conference room on the 4th floor where Prof was sitting with the DRI officers. And what happened during that so-called raid was quite weird, and if I may say so, hilarious. Those who are curious to know what happened can read the book. I would like to thank Prof for giving me the opportunity to assist him on the book and in the process relive the best days of my life. Thank you, sir. I would now like to request one of India's all-time greats, the Lord of Lords, former India captain Shri Dilip Vengsarkar, to say a few words.
For me to be here at the launch of Prof. Shetty's book, On Board, and my years in BCCI. I'm a professor, I can't call him Prof. I think I have too much respect for him. I met him in 89 when I played my 100 test match at the Wankhede Stadium. It was my first meeting with him. I didn't know him well before. But after I retired from international cricket in 1992, immediately I became chairman of MCA selection committee. And at that time, Professor, I was a convener, and that time I got to know him better. And I can only say that he was simply outstanding administrator I have seen. I think over the years, his contribution to cricket and administration is absolutely humongous. I always believed that as an administrator, if you have a cricketing background, it helps to take the right decisions. But Professor Ati wasn't a cricketer, he was an administrator, pure administrator. But his passion for the game, his focus for the game, and his honesty and sincerity has helped him to take always 100% correct decisions. And that helped all of us in MCA as well as in BCCI. MCA first, because whenever we had any issues, we used to ask sir that this is an issue and how we can solve it. And he had ready answer for that. As an administrator, he was always in time. I'd always ready to help, always ready to cooperate, and he always had a focus on the job. See, that was very important, and he was always well prepared. The preparation for administration is very important, and Professor had that. I can compare him to Professor Changadkar. I think he was my professor in college, an outstanding administrator, and he was also secretary of MCA and secretary of BCCI as well. He helped us a lot as kids. I think he always special tuitions for us for English and for other subjects. And he was so fond of cricket and cricketers, exactly like Professor Shetty. Because I have seen all the cricketers, the amount of respect he gets is absolutely tremendous, because administrators, to be honest with you, cricketers are not very fond of. But Professor is definitely an exception. And because his love for the game, and love for cricketers, everybody who comes, I think maybe from outstation players, or players from Mumbai, they always would go and first pay their respects to Professor Shetty. Such was his contribution to the game and help and love for the cricketers. I wish him all the best. He was an encyclopedia on administration, I would say. And I would like to wish him best. I hope he has a good health ahead. That's very important. And I'm sure this will be a very good read, and I can't wait to have my hands on it. Thank you very much.
We now come to the moment that all of us have been waiting for. I request Shri Sharad Pawar to unveil on board my years in the BCCI. request Mr. Sharad Pawar, with whom Prof had a long association, first in the MCA, then the BCCI, and finally the ICC, to say a few words.
Professor Ratnakar Shetty, the Defense Secretary Vijay Patil, अन्य सगळे सहकारी आणि मित्र, एका चांगल्या क्रिकेटच्या संबंधीच्या डॉक्युमेंटच्या अनावरणासाठी आज आपण या ठिकाणी एकत्रित झालो. रत्नाकर शेट्टी यांनी त्यांच्या आयुष्यातला जो काळ क्रिकेट आणि विशेषतः BCCI यांच्या संदर्भात झाला, त्याच्याबद्दलचं जे काही त्यांचे अनुभव होते त्यांनी अतिशय चांगल्या भाषेमध्ये आपल्या सगळ्यांच्या समोर ठेवले. हे पुस्तक पाहिल्याच्या नंतर एक गोष्ट नक्की लक्षामध्ये येते, या क्षेत्रामध्ये दोन भाग आहेत. एक वेंगसरकरांच्यासारखे जे लोक ज्यांनी मैदानं गाजवली, राज्याला देशाला विजय संपादन प्राप्त करायची कामगिरी केली आणि अनेक नव्या पिढीच्या उदयोन्मुख क्रिकेटर्सना प्रोत्साहित केलं. आणि दुसरी एक बाजू ही आहे की क्रिकेटच्या मॅचेस, क्रिकेटची संघटना ही अत्यंत प्रभावी रीतीनं प्रशासक म्हणून कशी चालवायची, हा जो दुसरा अँगल आहे तोही तितक्याच महत्त्वाचा आहे. प्रोफेसर शेट्टी यांनी प्रशासक म्हणून कामगिरी काय केली ही मुंबई क्रिकेट असोसिएशनशी संबंधित जे सहकारी आहेत त्यांना सांगण्याची आवश्यकता नाही. माझा त्यांचा परिचय एका वेगळ्या पार्श्वभूमीवर आला. मला आठवतं आहे की वानखेडेंच्या अखेरच्या काळामध्ये वानखेडेंनी एकदा मला सांगितलं की आता या संघटनेकडे लक्ष देण्याची जबाबदारी तुझी. वानखेडे गेले, जबाबदारी मनोज जोशींच्याकडे आली आणि गजवारी क्लबची जबाबदारी माझ्याकडे आली. आणि मला आठवतं आहे की इथं काहीतरी चांगलं काम करण्याच्यापेक्षा आम्हा लोकांचा अधिक वेळ हा कायदेशीर सल्ला कसा घेता येईल, कोर्टाच्या केसला तोंड कसं देता येईल, या कामाच्यासाठी सुद्धा राहिला. मी प्रयत्न केला की वानखेडे, MCA आणि गजवारे यांच्यातले मतभेद कसे कमी करता येतील, पण ते काही शक्य झालं नाही. मला काही यश आलं नाही त्याच्यामध्ये. शेवटी मी ठरवलं आता हे दुरुस्त करायचं असेल तर आपण MCAमध्ये जाऊ आणि MCAच्या निवडणुकीला उभं राहायचा निर्णय मी घेतला. खरं म्हणलं तर त्या निवडणुकीमध्ये MCAचं नेतृत्व करण्याची जबाबदारी ही घेण्याच्यासाठी अजित वाडेकर पुढे आले आणि क्रिकेटच्या क्षेत्रामध्ये त्यांचा अधिकार हा प्रचंड होता हे काही सांगायची आवश्यकता नाही. पण या दोन संघटनेतले महत्त्वाचे समन्वय हा त्याचा पाठीमागचा माझा हेतू होता आणि म्हणून मी निवडणुकीला उभं राहण्याचा निर्णय घेतला. त्या काळामध्ये मुंबई क्रिकेट आणि त्याचं नियंत्रण म्हणल्याच्या नंतर बाल माजरेकर ग्रुप हा अत्यंत प्रभावी ग्रुप होता आणि त्यांच्या समोर लढायचं ही काही साधी आणि सोपी गोष्ट होती. परंतु ज्या लोकांच्या विरुद्ध मी निवडणूक लढत होतो ते क्रिकेटमधले ज्ञानी होते, पण निवडणुकीच्या तंत्राच्या बाबतीत ज्ञानी नव्हते. ते कदाचित ज्ञान माझ्याकडे अधिक होतं आणि त्याचं कारण माझं क्षेत्र काय हे तुम्हाला सांगायची गरज नाही. आणि त्यावेळेला संपर्क साधत असताना माझ्या लक्षात आलं की विल्सन कॉलेजचा प्राध्यापक, केमिस्ट्रीचा टीचर, पण त्यांच्याबद्दल या क्षेत्राच्या विशेषतः मुंबई क्रिकेटमध्ये अतिशय आदराचं स्थान आहे आणि म्हणून त्यांच्याशी सुसंवाद साधता येईल का, त्यांची मदत घेता येईल का हा प्रयत्न मी केला. आणि तेव्हा पहिल्यांदा माझी आणि प्रोफेसर शेट्टींची भेट झाली. त्यांनी मला स्वच्छ सांगितलं की ठीक आहे, तुम्ही निवडणुकीला उभं राहा, हा निर्णय तुमचा आहे, हा अधिकार तुमचा आहे, पण तुमच्या निवडणुकीला माझ्याकडनं अजिबात मदत होऊ शकत नाही. आणि मदत होऊ शकत नाही त्यांनी सांगितलं आणि ते आणि त्यांच्या सहकार्याने काय करायचं ते केलं. परंतु निवडणुका कशा जिंकायच्या असतात याचं थोडं तज्ञ ज्ञान हे मला थोडं अधिक असल्याच्यामुळं ती निवडणूक मी जिंकली. आणि मला सगळ्यात आनंद एका गोष्टीचा आहे की जी निवडणूक संपली आणि त्या दिवशी माझा निर्णय झाला की निवडणुकीच्या संबंधी यत्किंचित विचार करायचा नाही. कुणी मदत केली अथवा ना केली याची चर्चासुद्धा करायची नाही. आणि पहिल्यांदा मुंबई क्रिकेटचं प्रशासन चांगलं कसं करता येईल याच्यामध्ये लक्ष द्यायचा निर्णय माझा होता. आणि मी रत्नाकर शेट्टींशी संपर्क साधला आणि त्यांनी सांगितलं की निवडणूक झाली, आमची काही भूमिका होती, पण संघटनेच्यासाठी तुमचं लक्ष देण्याची भूमिका ही मला मान्य आहे आणि माझ्याकडून पूर्ण सहकार्य होईल. आणि त्या दिवसापासून जिथपर्यंत माझा क्रिकेटची आणि असोसिएशनची संपर्क आणि संबंध होता त्या सगळ्या कालखंडामध्ये भक्कमपणानं प्रशासन व्यवस्थित कसं होईल यासाठी मला कुणी साथ दिली असेल तर ती रत्नाकर शेट्टींनी दिली हे सांगायला मला मनापासूनचा आनंद. मुंबई क्रिकेटच्या नंतर मला BCCIमध्ये जाता आलं. मी त्यांना आग्रह केला की तुम्ही इथे या. त्याच्यामध्ये त्यांनी सहकार्य केलं. आमच्या सगळ्यांच्या मनामध्ये काही अस्वस्थता होत्या काही गोष्टीच्या संदर्भात. BCCI याचं हेडक्वार्टर मुंबईतच झालं पाहिजे असा आग्रह आम्हा लोकांचा होता. त्या काळामध्ये साधारणतः BCCIचा जो अध्यक्ष होता त्याच्या राज्यामध्ये संघटनेचं कामकाज चालायचं. हे सगळं बदललं पाहिजे, कुठेतरी क्रिकेटचं हेडक्वार्टर केलं पाहिजे हा निकाल आम्ही लोकांनी बसून घेतला. आणि त्यानंतर वानखेडे स्टेडियमचा चेहरा कसा बदलता येईल, सुविधा कशा देता येतील आणि त्याहीपेक्षा प्रशासक म्हणून देशातल्या सगळ्या राज्यातल्या क्रिकेट संघटना ह्या मजबूत कशा करता येतील आणि खेळाला अधिक कसं प्रोत्साहन देता येईल याच्यामध्ये आम्ही लोकांनी लक्ष घातलं आणि ते करण्याच्यामध्ये यश झालं. स्थिती बदलली. आपण बघतो आहोत अगदी आत्ता बसलेला हा हॉल असो, क्रिकेट सेंटरची वास्तू असो, स्टेडियमची दुरुस्ती असो, मला आनंद आहे की विजय पाटलांनी गेल्या काही दिवसामध्ये या स्टेडियमचं चित्र आपण मॅच बघायला याल त्यावेळी तुम्हाला प्रत्यक्ष पाहायला मिळेल ते त्यांनी दुरुस्त केलं. आणि म्हणून इथलं इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर जसं आपण सुधारलं तसं देशात कसं होईल याची खबरदारी आम्ही लोकांनी घेतली आणि अनेक ठिकाणी हे इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर उत्तम होईल या दृष्टिकोनातून पावलं टाकली. एका बाजूनं प्रशासक म्हणून ही जशी जबाबदारी होती त्याच्यामध्ये क्रिकेट मैदान ज्यांनी गाजवलं आणि गाजवणार आहेत त्याचं पोटेन्शियल ज्यांच्यामध्ये आहे अशा नवीन उदयोन्मुख खेळाडू आणि ज्यांनी आपल्या आयुष्याचा उत्तम काळ हा क्रिकेटच्यासाठी दिला आणि निवृत्त झाले पण त्यांना सन्मानानं कसं राहता येईल या गोष्टीच्याकडे सुद्धा लक्ष केंद्रित करण्याचा प्रयत्न आम्ही लोकांनी केला आणि त्यामधूनच ही IPLची निर्मिती झाली. एक गोष्ट मला सांगायला हरकत नाही की IPLची निर्मिती यासंबंधीचे प्रशासकीय निर्णय हे आम्ही लोकांनी घेतले पण सवन कन्सेप्ट ही डेव्हलप करण्याच्यासाठी कदाचित कुणी वादग्रस्त व्यक्तिमत्व म्हणत असेल पण ललित मोदींचं त्याच्यामध्ये योगदान होतं हे आम्ही अतिशय जवळून पाहिलेलं आहे. आणि यातून IPL सुरू झाली. अनेक नवीन खेळाडू परत दिसायला लागले. प्रत्येक जिल्ह्यामध्ये आणि राज्यामध्ये नवीन चेहरे आपल्याला बघायला मिळाले आणि सवन क्रिकेटचा चेहरा बदलला. आणि हे सगळं करण्याच्यासाठी जे एक प्रशासकीय सहकार्य याची जी आवश्यकता होती ही सगळी भूमिका प्रोफेसर शेट्टी यांनी आपल्या खांद्यावर घेतली आणि त्यामुळंच हे सगळं स्थित्यंतर क्रिकेटमधलं आम्ही लोक करू शकतो. त्याचं फार मोठं श्रेय रत्नाकर शेट्टींच्याकडे आहे हे सांगायला मला मनापासूनचा आनंद होतो. आणि म्हणून आज क्रिकेटच्या क्षेत्रामध्ये त्यांनी काय केलं त्यासंबंधीचं लिखाण या पुस्तकाच्या माध्यमातून आलं आहे. त्याच्यामध्ये दोन्ही भाग आहेत. प्रशासक म्हणून ज्यांनी कामं केली त्यांच्याबद्दलची माहिती आहे, बाकीच्या इतर जी गोष्टी आहेत आणि अतिशय वाचनीय अशा प्रकारचं चित्र आहे. ज्या वेळेला BCCIच्यामधून माझी निवड एशियन क्रिकेटचा अध्यक्ष म्हणून झाली आणि त्यानंतर ICCचा अध्यक्ष म्हणून झाली त्यावेळेला मी रत्नाकर शेट्टींना सुचवलं की तुम्ही आता दुबईला या, ICCमध्ये या. पण त्यांनी मला स्वच्छ सांगितलं की माझं सगळं लक्ष BCCI आणि MCA याच्या बाहेर नाही. मी तिथंच राहणार. तिथून तुम्हाला काही सहकार्य हवं असेल ते सहकार्य देण्याची तयारी माझी सतत राहील. पण मी काय ICCमध्ये येऊ शकत नाही. खरं म्हणलं तर ICCमध्ये मोठी जबाबदारी घेण्याची संधी असतानासुद्धा ज्या संस्थेमध्ये आपली व्यक्तिगत कमिटमेंट आहे त्या संस्थेची तडजोड करायची नाही, कमिटमेंटची तडजोड करायची नाही हे सूत्र त्यांनी कधी बदललं नाही आणि त्याचे ते भक्कम राहिले. आणि त्यामुळं त्यांच्या प्रशासकीय अनुभवाचा फायदा ICCमध्ये आम्हाला घेण्याला मर्यादा आलेल्या आहेत. पण आनंद दुसऱ्या गोष्टीचा होता की ज्यावेळेला वर्ल्ड कपच्या याच्या तिथं घेतल्या गेल्या ICCच्या वतीनं तो निर्णय आम्ही लोकांनी घेतला आणि तो वर्ल्ड कप अत्यंत प्रभावीपणानं राबवणं आणि विशेषतः त्याची जी अंतिम मॅच होती, फायनल मॅच होती ज्याला आपण सगळे होता ती त्याची यंत्रणा, त्याचं ऑर्गनायझेशन हे करण्याच्यामध्ये रत्नाकर शेट्टींचं योगदान हा फार प्रचंड होतं, हे मी फार जवळून पाहिलेलं आणि म्हणून क्रिकेटच्या क्षेत्रामध्ये वाहून घेतलेलं, जे पूर्ण कमिटमेंट असलेलं असं व्यक्तिमत्व म्हणून प्रोफेसर शेट्टी यांना आपण ओळखतो. मला आनंद आहे की त्यांनी ऑन बोर्ड माय इयर्स इन BCCI हे पुस्तक या ठिकाणी लिहून या सगळ्या क्षेत्राचा इतिहास हा नव्या पिढीच्या समोर ठेवला. त्याबद्दल त्यांचं मी अभिनंदन करतो. या पुस्तकाचं प्रकाशन झालं असं जाहीर करतो आणि माझे 2 शब्द संपवतो.
I would now like to request Dr. Vijay Patil and Shri Milind Narvekar to make a bouquet presentation to Professor Shetty on behalf of the MCA Governing Council. Ladies and gentlemen, I now hand it over to Professor Ratnakar Shetty.
Respected Pawar Sahib, Dilip Vengsarkar, Dr. Vijay Patil, Rudra, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to stand before you and speak on the book as such, On Board, My Years in BCCI. The seeds of this exercise actually started, Nilesh is here. I take a lecture every year at the Indian Institute of Sports Management, and I think in 2018 the students brought out a document on 2011 World Cup, and that was the beginning as to why not write a book. People started asking me. I really didn't get into it actually, because all books are normally sensationalized and some controversy there which erupts. In March 2020, I had gone to the Chanakya Institution of Mumbai University. The Chanakya Institute, Dr. Pillai is here, the director. He had invited me to give a talk on Chanakya Niti with some of the Indian captains, how they react and what they do. And at the end of the lecture, which was about 1.5 hours, 2 hours, we were just sitting across, and Mr. Indulkar and Dr. Pillai really suggested, they said, why don't you try? At least make a beginning, with all this experience that you have. And that was a time when I thought that, yes, I can give it a try. And then one fine day, I got a phone call from Rudra Sharma. I had never spoken to him earlier. I didn't know, I knew Rupa Publications, but I didn't know him personally. And he suddenly called up and he threw up this idea that we would be interested in publishing your book of your experiences in the BCCI as a cricket administrator. And then I spoke to Devendra. It was pandemic time, nothing to do, and thought that maybe we can look at it positively. And that was when the idea came of writing this book. I must admit here that Devendra Prabhudesai has made an immense contribution in finalizing this book, in setting up the chapters, the sequence of the chapters, and the flow of events that was necessary for the book. He himself is a reputed author. He has authored books on Sunil Gavaskar, Sachin Tendulkar and Rahul Dravid. And in fact, I think all of you must appreciate that only recently you must have read that Rahul Dravid book authored by Devendra Prabhudesai is into its fourth print now, fourth reprint. And I think it's, it was a pleasure because I had worked with him in the BCCI. It was easy, therefore, to communicate. I knew that it was a pleasure to work with him. But I had a problem because my daughter who is here was not very happy that I had decided to write a book. And her apprehension, we sat and discussed, her apprehension was, why you are doing this? Because you will invite some controversy or the other, and it's not good. But somehow I had made up my mind, and I told Pawar Saab the other day that I would be writing on my experiences in Mumbai Cricket and BCCI, two institutions for which I have worked and two institutions which have given everything to me in life. And therefore, whatever I write shall not be anything sensationalized or controversial, but I will write facts of what I have seen and experienced during my years in these two institutions. And that is the principle on which I decided to write. A couple of chapters there you will find is on Mumbai Cricket Association. One of the biggest assets of Indian cricket, if there is, it is Mumbai Cricket Association. This is the only association you will find that over the number of years that I worked for the association, I got a chance to work with about 30 international and first-class cricketers who enjoyed devoting their time to cricket administration after their retirement. One of them is sitting here on the dais with me. And it was such a pleasure, from Madhav Mantri, Ramakant Desai, Dilip Sardesai, Naren Tamane, Dilip Vengsarkar, Surunaikyas, Milind Rege, so many of them, Chandrakant Pandit is here, who came forward, Praveen Ambres, I can just keep on adding names. But that was, I think, a positive aspect of Mumbai cricket, because people contested elections. They didn't just come there because they were cricketers. They contested elections, won the elections, and they came forward to help run cricket of an association. That I feel was a great asset that we had as far as Mumbai cricket was concerned. I enjoyed working with Mumbai cricket because for me, my hero for Indian, when I started following Indian cricket, was Mr. Gavaskar and Mr. Vishwanath. I used to follow Australian cricket a lot before I started a liking for Indian cricket. But then the three huge people or huge cricketers that this association has provided, the little master in Mr. Sunil Gavaskar, the master blaster in Tendulkar, and of course the Lord of Lords, Mr. Dilip Vengsarkar. When I went to Lords in 2000 with the under-15 team and went to the dressing room where his name is written there as for scoring 300s, consecutive hundreds at Lords, I think that was a moment of great pride for me that, I come from the same association where he also was involved. These are the people who have given their best years for Mumbai cricket. As Mr. Pawar explained, I think, I was invited by Uddhavji to Pune for a prize distribution function of Samna Trophy, which was the brainchild of Aditya Thackeray then, a small boy. But he wanted a tournament to be run. And I was to be felicitated for helping in organizing that tournament for some years at the hands of Mr. Kapil Dev. And Mr. Agashe, Jnaneshwar Agashe called me. He said, Sharad Pawar wants to talk to you. So I said, I can't talk to him. I can't meet him in Pune but he handed over the phone to Mr. Pawar. I was a bit speechless at that time. But then I told him, that sir, we heard that you are contesting the election, but our support has been promised to Ajit Wadekar because at that time we didn't know that you are contesting. So he said, no, I don't want to talk on that. So I said, we'll meet tomorrow. And I still remember the Oberoi Hotel where he met us. Bal Madhalkar and me, we went to meet him. The first sentence he told me, don't bother about my election, he said. I said, okay, sir. Then he said that I'm interested in seeking your assistance after the election. So, and as he rightly said, he was he had a mastery on elections. So he asked me, how many voters do you have in MCA? So I said 350. म्हणजे मला 180 मतं पाहिजेत. मग तुम्ही काळजीच करू नका म्हणे त्याची. कारण मला जे लोक येऊन भेटतायत ती जी मी ॲडिशनल बेरीज केली तर काहीतरी 400 मतं होतात. कारण प्रत्येकजण सांगतोय की माझ्याकडे 20 मतं आहेत, माझ्याकडे 15 मतं आहेत. तर मी म्हटलं साहेब, माझं स्पष्ट तुम्हाला आय एम क्लॅरिफाईड, आय एम विथ यू. You are my president once you are elected, and my commitment is to the association. And I can tell you, this man has turned the fortunes of Mumbai cricket. People ask, what has Mr. Pawar done? And I told this to the Lodha committee also. When I went to the Lodha committee, I was asked, what do you feel about politicians in cricket? And I told him because Justice Lodha knew me. So I said, sir, I'll speak only of one person, but there are others also who have contributed. And they don't need cricket to become popular because they have established themselves in life as politicians. But the game is being helped. So far as they don't interfere in the conduct of the game, and only contribute to building infrastructure, I think that itself explains his contribution, I told him. They were a bit upset by my answer. So I said, I am firm on this, I said. Since you asked me a question, I have explained to you what he has done and why we need politicians. For me, I think Mr. Pawar was never a politician as the president of MCA. He was always a love for cricket that he had. Cricket was related to him. His father-in-law played for India. And his only aim was that what needs to be done for Mumbai cricket, let us do that. He assigned me the job of settling the dispute with Garware Clubhouse. Many people feel that, we didn't get much out of Garware Clubhouse. But very few people know the High Court order was that you cannot remove Garware Clubhouse. They will exist. And MCA can start charging them a certain rent per month. So obviously, therefore, we had to end this fight somewhere. And that is why, with Mr. Pawar as the chief arbitrator, a settlement was reached with Garware Clubhouse. I still remember the Bandra Kurla complex. Those of you who were present for Tendulkar function, when he scored 10,000 runs. Mr. Vilasrao Deshmukh was on the dais, and Mr. Pawar said, we need a ground in central Mumbai or in Bandra and Andheri. And that is how the seed was sown. Next day he called me. He said, how do you know Ajit Varti? Ajit Varti was the commissioner of MMRDA. तू कसं ओळखतोस अजित वर्टीना? कारण अजित वर्टी म्हणाला की प्रोफेसरला पाठवा. तर मी म्हटलं, सर, ही इज माय सिनियर इन द कॉलेज. ही वॉज अ विल्सोनियन. So that's how I know him. And in one day, I can tell you, Vilasrao Deshmukh finished the whole paperwork in 48 hours. The lease was signed and the ground was allotted to us. And you have to see BKC and you will realize what has been done. These are things. The other at Kandivli. The plot at Kandivli is another example of what MCA is and what stature we have reached over the years. Mumbai cricket needs to be taken care of. And it's time that we bounce back to where we belong. Not only as an association, but also as the cricketing talent that we have in the country. When I was I still remember 2006, there was an AGM in CCI, and it was lunchtime. And Mr. Pawar and Shashank Manohar called me. And Mr. Pawar, was in his own style, he told me, Professor, तुम्हाला मालकम स्पीड व्हायचं आहे BCCIचं. तर मी म्हटलं, सर, I need to think on this. म्हणजे काय प्रॉब्लेम आहे? म्हटलं, प्रॉब्लेम असा आहे की माझ्या कॉलेज टेन्युअरमध्ये अजून 5 वर्ष राहिली आहेत आणि BCCI पॉलिटिक्स जे मी जवळून पाहिलं आहे ते कसं कधी बदलतं ते चित्र सांगता येत नाही. तर मी माझे 5 वर्ष ते कंप्लीट केलं तरी आय एम सिक्युअर्ड ऑफ दॅट. तर मला म्हणाले, ती काळजी तुम्ही करू नका, कारण की दॅट वॉज 2006. तर 2008पर्यंत मी अध्यक्ष आहे आणि 2008 ते 11 शशांक अध्यक्ष आहे. तर आमच्या दोघांची तुम्हाला सांगायचं आहे की यू हॅव टू ॲक्सेप्ट दिस पोस्ट. बट स्टील आय वॉज नॉट कम्फर्टेबल. तर मला म्हणाले की ठीक आहे, मी एज्युकेशन मिनिस्टरना फोन करतो आणि तुम्हाला 2 वर्ष लीनवर डेप्युटेशन टू BCCI फ्रॉम विल्सन कॉलेज. अँड दॅट इज हाऊ आय ॲक्सेप्टेड द रोल ऑफ इन BCCI. अँड लंच टाईम ते डिस्कशन झाल्यानंतर जेटली भेटले. मला म्हणाले, काय झालं? तर मी म्हटलं, साहेब, म्हटलं, जेटली सर, Pawar Sahab is saying that I should join BCCI as an official administrator. So he said, take it. If Mr. Pawar has told you, take it, because you can make some changes and you can work for BCCI. And that is how. आणि लंच नंतर साहेबांना आठवत असेल, लंच नंतर जी मीटिंग झाली, ललित मध्येच उभा राहिला त्या मीटिंगच्या आणि त्यांनी अनाऊन्स केलं की ॲज ऑफिस बेरर्स वी हॅव डिसाइडेड टू अपॉइंट प्रोफेसर शेट्टी ॲज अन ॲडमिनिस्ट्रेटर इन BCCI. That's how my role in BCCI started. The House AGM took a decision that whatever Mr. Pawar decides, as far as my payment was concerned, as far as the other facilities go, it was entirely Mr. Pawar's decision. And that's how my working with BCCI started. I enjoyed my years in BCCI. It was great. And when he went to ICC, he told me that you come to ICC. I still remember, sir didn't tell you something which I must clarify now. There was a meeting in the ICC, and they were coming back from the ICC meeting. Shashank Manohar and Mr. Pawar had attended that meeting, आणि विमानातनं उतरून शशांक कॉल्ड मी अप फर्स्ट अँड ही टोल्ड मी, तुला साहेब काहीतरी सांगतील त्याच्या आधी मीच सांगतोय की मी अपोज केलं आहे तुझं ICC कारण की तुला BCCIमध्येच राहायचं आहे. तर मी म्हटलं आय हॅव ॲश्युअर्ड यू दॅट टिल युअर प्रेसिडेंटशिप आय एम गोइंग टू बी इन BCCI अँड 2011 इज अ वर्ल्ड कप इयर, सो डोंट वरी आय सेड, दॅट्स नॉट अ प्रॉब्लेम. आणि 5 मिनिटात साहेबांचा फोन आला. अँड आय टोल्ड हिम दॅट शशांकचा फोन आला आणि तो बोलला मला, म्हटलं काय झालं ते. बट सर माय कमिटमेंट इज टू BCCI अँड आय विल रिमेन हिअर. BCCIमध्ये his contribution, 3 important contributions I will highlight. One is women's cricket. Diana is sitting here. Whatever women's cricket is today is because of Mr. Sharad Pawar. पवार साहेब यायच्या 10 वर्ष आधीपासून मी बघायचो BCCI मीटिंगमध्ये, दर मीटिंगमध्ये विमेन्स क्रिकेट अजेंडावर असायचा आणि इट यूज्ड टू बी पोस्टपोन्ड. So when he announced women's cricket to be merged or under BCCI, तेव्हासुद्धा काही लोकांनी, मी पुस्तकात लिहिलं आहे, तेव्हासुद्धा लोकांनी सांगितलं कशाला आपण हे त्रास घेतो आहे, त्यांना आपण पैसे देऊया, लेट देम रन देअर ओन क्रिकेट, लेट इट बी सेपरेट. बट only he could do it. He just said nothing doing, this is the decision as the president of BCCI. The second important thing which he did was the pension scheme for cricketers. And adding to that, it was only for international cricketers. He brought in the first class cricketers, and most important I think was bringing the widows of international cricketers. I think that was something which was never thing. And IPL. I don't think, but for him, IPL would have started. Let me tell you honestly. Lalit Modi it was his brainchild. IPL was his brainchild. There was a meeting in Singapore. Sahib told me, you go with Lalit and come and tell me what that meeting is all about. And that was the meeting to plan IPL. Mr. Bindra, myself and Lalit were there. And that was in 2007. We came back and Mr. Pawar announced, he called the meeting of the board and he said, we are starting IPL. These were his words. Not asking whether we should do or not, but we are starting IPL. So whatever we see today, people, we talk about the importance of IPL. I think it is not only money that is important, but more important is the cricketing culture that has developed. Look at our cricketers from districts, from states, cities, who are challenging well-placed cricketers. There are people who are not bought, but there are people who are just entering into the cricketing arena with huge amount of money. And that's the change that has been brought about in Indian cricket. The World Cup 2011 was the biggest pleasure for me as the tournament director. I still remember the first meeting in Pakistan. Mr. Pawar was the chairman of the committee. And he started the meeting with saying that final will be played at Wankhede Stadium. That was the first statement of that meeting. So nobody could say anything. We came back and then he realized that Wankhede Stadium, lot of repairs will be required. So we went to Wadala truck terminal, if you people have gone that side. And Vilasrao Deshmukh was the chief minister, so he also came. He showed us the land, but there were a lot of encroachments there. So obviously it was out of question. Finally we decided we'll refurbish Wankhede Stadium. And what you see, refurbished Wankhede Stadium, entering the record books of international cricket as the first venue where the home country has won the World Cup. And that was the first time it happened. there are immense number of examples you will find in the books. There were 4 top administrators I have worked with, Mr. Dalmia. Each one had a different personality, each one handled things differently. Mr. Jagmohan Dalmia was very close to me. He is the one who handheld me into administration. And in spite of his group being opposite to our group, Mr. Pawar's group in the election, he made me the joint secretary, which surprised everybody, joint secretary of the board, and asked me to continue as the executive secretary in charge. I'll always remember Mr. Dalmia for whatever he has done for me and what I've learned from him. Mr. Pawar, as I already told you and described, a huge personality, and the biggest asset was to get things done. In the meetings, any agenda that was to be approved, he had a knack of getting things done, including the cricket center building, which is the headquarters of BCCI. You know, BCCI headquarters, sir, used to be discussed in all meetings from 1950 onwards. 1950 to 2004, in every meeting, a decision used to be taken or discussion used to be there on headquarters, but it was he who finalized the location. Only one, the other two, of course, Shashank Manohar and N. Srinivasan. Again, 2 gentlemen of different identities and different personalities. Shashank was unique in his own way. He would listen to everybody, take his own decision. At times, whether people like it or not was not his botheration. And he was also unique in a way because a person who never wore a watch, but still on time for all meetings or before time, didn't have a passport. We had to make a passport for him to attend ICC meeting. And always straight and committed to the administration, and N. Srinivasan. I think very few people would know that the amount of help that he gave to cricketers, jobs to cricketers, funding cricketers in difficult times, and the way he ran BCCI was a corporate office. So the corporate structure in BCCI was brought by N. Srinivasan. The only thing that I could not complete in this book was a chapter on cricketers. You know, people who have contributed over the number of years. One is sitting here. I just told him before the function started. He was appointed as the chairman of talent search organization of the BCCI. He used to go and watch matches of under 16, under 17. He used to spend time, the moment he read that some boy was doing well somewhere, he would go and watch that match. I have not seen a chairman in selection committee better than Dilip Vengsarkar in my tenure in BCCI. We celebrated Virat Kohli's 100th test. But I think I know the truth that when he came back from ICC World Cup under 19, he pushed him into the emerging players tournament, sent him to Australia, where Virat got 100 in the final, which we won. He came back, Dilip introduced him into the Indian team and brought him into this mainstream of Indian cricket. Not only that, even in the Greg Chappell era, you know, of difficult times in Indian cricket, some of the cricketers were left in the lurch at that time. Many of them came back to play for India when he became the chairman of selection committee, because he had that power and he could take such decisions. That was Dilip Vengsarkar. A chapter which someday I will definitely would like to complete with, because immense contribution from cricketers. Yesteryear cricketers did not get anything except for the pension that they are getting. The cricketers of today are earning well And therefore, in my chapter on BCCI, I have mentioned there that in the good old days, BCCI did not have money. The funding used to come from 5 test centers. Each of the test centers had to pay 4 annas per ticket to the BCCI. That was the money which was collected, and that's how BCCI came into existence. And it is only the vision of those people who started BCCI one can never forget. I'm sure that you're going to enjoy reading this book as much as I enjoyed writing this book. I realized the pleasure only after reading the book when I got a copy of the book. And I'm happy that I've given you something which is readable. Thank you very much.